In Health Watch, a survey finds 35% of American adults reported symptoms of anxiety disorder this summer. That's according to Axios. That's more than 4 times higher compared to the same time last year. Since then, of course, over 200,000 Americans have died from COVID-19. Unemployment has skyrocketed. Civil unrest has gripped the country, and there is growing concern about the upcoming presidential election. Uncertainty might very well be the theme of 2020. So, to talk about uncertainty and its clinical cousin, anxiety, we are joined by Dr. Stephanie Gorka. She's an assistant professor at Ohio State, where she researches anxiety disorders. Good to see you, Stephanie. So, when reading the Axios article, I was struck by something that was sort of interesting to me, which is that the anxiety that we feel as human beings is sort of hardwired into us. It's part of our DNA, perhaps going back as far as the first humans who sort of ever walked the earth. That, when you knew that in the dark, because there was no electricity and you hadn't discovered fire, that out there's a saber-toothed tiger waiting to eat you. And what that could do to the psyche of, Australopithecus afarensis. And it's still evident with us today.
Yes, I think anxiety is a very basic emotion that is necessary for our survival, like you were saying. It alerts us to pay attention to our environment, that there's the potential for danger. That way we can take appropriate action and protect ourselves. So yes, very necessary for survival and very basic.
So then what if, though, you are feeling anxious all the time? What if, for example, during a pandemic, you find your anxiety levels sort of higher for months on end? What's the possible fallout of that?
Yeah, right. We know that uncertainty drives anxiety. When there's a lack of information, it diminishes our feeling of preparedness and really puts us on edge and creates this hyperarousal and hypervigilance. And long term, being in that state of hypervigilance and arousal is not good for our health and can lead to a lot of health problems in the long run.
So are certain people more vulnerable to anxiety than others? What does your research show? I mean, I'm a pretty anxious person, so I have to, meditate and do all these things to tamp it down. What are you showing about who might be more susceptible to anxiety than others?
Yes, we know that there are certain individuals who are very sensitive to uncertainty and they are vulnerable to more severe anxiety. And we know that there are neurobiological differences between individuals who are very sensitive to uncertainty. We see abnormalities in certain brain circuits that are involved in detecting threat, but also in filtering out salient stimuli. So for some, it is very hard for them on a neurobiological level to disengage from information and to filter out what to pay attention to and what not to pay attention to. So we see differences in these individuals' brains and how they function.
These are, obviously unprecedented times. If I had a dime for every time I've read or said unprecedented, we don't know what's going to happen from day to day often, but what is it about the unknown that causes distress? I mean, why don't we just sort of take it as one big adventure? Instead, we really, really feel uneasy when we're faced with the unknown.
Yeah, we've known for a long time through research that a lack of information, any form of ambiguity or uncertainty puts people on edge, and that we are extremely motivated beings to resolve uncertainty and get as much information as we can to prepare ourselves in the best way possible for the future. So now more than ever, there's just so much uncertainty on so many different levels. It is impossible to predict the future and know what's to come. So people find themselves on alert and on edge now more than ever, just because, again, there's just so many different layers of where this is coming from. And it can be a slippery slope, and it can be very tricky for all individuals to cope with. And we know from our research that some tend to deal with this better than others.
But, okay, doctor, so here's what I would think that some of us who are more anxious than others, going back to my earlier point about this being sort of hardwired into who we are as human beings, those of us who were worried about being ripped to shreds by a saber-toothed tiger took some precautions, and those who were just like, whatever, bro, whatever happens, like, live your life, go out into the dark, you know, those people did not make it to the end of the night, and perhaps more importantly, did not reproduce, and so their descendants aren't here, and my nervous Nelly ancestors, well, here I am.
They had relaxed but very short lives.
Exactly.
Yeah, there is a spectrum, right? What you're alluding to is too much can cause its own problems, but too little can also create its own issues. So we look at anxiety and response to anxiety on a full dimension, and that you want to be somewhere closer to the middle where you take risks, you are not hiding under the covers in your bed, but you are not just throwing complete caution to the wind and getting yourself eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Correct.
You know, you see all these memes now that sort of compare what we're dealing with right now to other times where people were under duress, like, say, the Great Depression or, you know, World War II. And the memes go something like, you know, your great-grandparents had to, like, you know, storm a foreign beach or whatever. We're just asking you to stay home. Can't you get over it? While we're all sort of lamenting about our condition. But I wonder if, you know, not dealing with the pandemic, but then sort of and the economic impact of it, but then you pile on social media and the fact that we are at home, so we're sort of binging news, and I know we're kind of part of it, and we are, Vlad and I, attempting to inform, but even I can agree that sometimes the news can get a little heavy. I wonder if, like, all these other inputs that we're getting in terms of information make it even more challenging to navigate anxious times.
Yes, I think social media is tricky. A lot of people turn to social media for information, but they get these little snippets. They see a post, they see an article headline, and it spikes their anxiety. They don't have a lot of information about it, and it turns into a lot of what ifs. So I think, and we know neurobiologically that some people have a really hard time disengaging from this once they are in that state of arousal or in that state of anxiety. So we find that people are spinning their wheels, just going down these dark rabbit holes on the internet, and that it can really just spike their anxiety and ruin their day and keep them in a state of arousal for an extended period of time. So we always talk with individuals about identifying their triggers and the role that social media and their behaviors play in their anxiety, and maybe when it's time to step away and avoid some of those triggers.
You know, Doctor, the role of social media and technology in general is sort of intriguing to me. And I think Anne-Marie and I, you have talked about this in the past when we were able to be together here at the Broadcast Center. You know, for example, as a kid, I was bullied a lot. And I always thought to myself as an adult that, you know, that with the kind of bullying that existed before social media, if you kind of knew where the bully was going to be, or you could figure out ways to avoid him. And also, when you went home, the bullying generally stopped because you weren't interacting with an individual. And now with social media, the bullying is online, and it made me wonder, can the bullying that you receive, social media bullying, cyberbullying, be more detrimental to you, even though it's not physical? It's not the kid shoving you into the locker, like in my case, but it may be something that's online. In my brain, I think to myself, well, I can just unplug the computer. But so many doctors have said that no, cyberbullying is actually worse than the kind of physical bullying that existed before technology.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of really important points, that social media is accessible and available at all times, and that individuals may not get a break from some of this negative information, hurtful information, and that prolonged and chronic and repeated stress is not good for us and comes with a lot of negative consequences. And when you put it on that sort of time frame, that it's different than having the break and escape from it for even just a night or something like that.